Seahawks fans, wherever you may be. Thanks for listening to the show. Join your hosts, Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers, as we talk Seahawks football. Hey, hi, Seahawks fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstad, sitting down with co-host Keith Myers, here to talk Seahawks football. We're ending our probably 2-month-long series looking at NFL draft prospects as we lead up to the NFL draft. This show is dedicated to looking at the safety group in the draft. It's a pretty good group. I think we talked last show when we were doing corners that we really like this group coming in overall. It's a diverse group. So when you look at the players, there's quite a bit of, and what I mean by that is multiple looks. A lot of these players can play nickel. They can play, up in the box. They can play back. That's kind of what the team is looking for. So if the team is looking for a safety, which I believe they are, if you take a look at the roster, I think we're going to get one out of this draft. And it wouldn't surprise me if it was, no later than the third round as a guy that could potentially come in and start. They've got essentially Kayvon Wallace, Rashawn Jenkins, and Julian Love. I think that Kayvon Wallace is kind of a draft hedge kind of a guy. Rashawn Jenkins and Julian Love definitely could start on most teams. And they will probably likely start for the Seahawks, but they need another guy. Jarek Reed had the knee last year in November, may not be ready for training camp and the season. So I think it's likely that the Seahawks look for kind of a long-term solution there at the safety spot. How you doing, Keith? Welcome in.
Yeah, thanks. That's a pretty good summary. Although I wouldn't say this is a good group. I'd say that overall this is a okay group at safety. I think that it is diverse. There's a lot of people, but there's no real high-end talent here, and that's the concern that I have.
I hear you, and I'm not so concerned because we've been paying safeties for so long that it's hard for me to imagine even another safety on the roster. And if you get a high-end safety in the draft, you're eventually going to have to pay that guy if it works out. Now, we didn't have any problem doing that in the past on this team. In fact, for the most of the last 13 years, we've had safeties in this on this roster that we've ended up paying. So, but they're solid talent, I think. Guys that can start for you, guys that can evolve and be part of the defensive solution. I think that there's talent through, say, round 3-4 in this draft where you're going to have guys that could come in and be at least rotation pieces for you in year one and then eventually work into a starting role. And guys that aren't going to be necessarily superstars, but they're going to be really nice, fits overall in what you're trying to do on the defensive side. Okay, so last show you kind of hinted at a few ideas about maybe a surprise or a player that you really like that you wanted to talk about. Let's open it up with that. Unless your guy is later on.
No, it's not. He's near the top, but not at the top of most boards. But I think he's an elite prospect that is going to be an elite player. He's just, at least by the draft media, is just not being viewed that way. And I find it weird. Just go through and look at his tape, and maybe it's just because there's so much talent around him at Georgia, but I'm talking about Javon Bullard. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who athletically is like really nice. He can play full time in the nickel. He can, get up and play in the box as a box safety. He can drop back and be your center fielder. He can literally do just about anything. And that kind of versatility is incredible. And he just does everything. He does everything well. I don't see a lot of weaknesses in his game. But I don't know. I just think that he's a guy that I think can come into the league and be very good.
Yeah, Keith, he's been one of my favorite prospects, not just at safety, but overall in this on the defensive side of the draft since I started looking at players in January really closely, and often would try to get him in my mock draft to the Seahawks because I think he'd be a great fit in Mike Macdonald's defense because what they're looking for is scheme diversity, scheme adaptability out of their safety group and their corners, all together. And they kind of interchange them and play different spots, and they're asking their guys to disguise a lot. And Javon Bullard fits perfectly into that, what they're trying to do. 5'10", 198 pounds, 4'7", 40, 151 split, which means he's going to have a lot of agility, explosiveness in close area space. And you're right, he's going to be able to play the nickel, but also he's one of the best man coverage safeties in the entire class. And so I don't think that they would have a problem using him on the outside if they were to disguise. Maybe you bring a guy like Witherspoon or even Woolen, on a blitz, and Bullard slides outside and covers, and he's got that ability on your deep end. He's really an impressive prospect as far as his how smart he is and instinctive. So I like him a lot. But he's not my number one guy.
See, to me he's got kind of like Budda Baker, who has made a name for himself in the NFL after being at Washington for just being able to do everything. And so you can line him up and he can take care of responsibilities just all over the field. And I think that in a Mike Macdonald defense where he wants that kind of versatility, I think there's just a lot of value here.
I agree. I think, that's why I think I'm going to really enjoy talking about this class overall, because there's like 7 or 8 guys that fit into that bucket. Now, they're not all equally talented, but if you're looking for scheme diversity, this is definitely the draft to get your safety. I had a guy at the top originally in Tyler Nubin out of Minnesota as my kind of 1A, Javon Bullard being kind of a 1B. You can have some people have Cameron Kitchens up high. I don't a little bit. His athletic testing kind of dropped him down a little bit for me. Tyler Nubin's definitely a guy that I would look at, but he's also running a 4.59 40, tenth of a second slower than Bullard, and they have similar profiles. Maybe Nubin's a little longer, and I kind of like that out of the safety position. But the number one guy is, I heard Daniel Jeremiah about 4 or 5 days ago on the NFL channel mention this guy as a potential player that would switch positions or at least offer massive scheme adaptability. And that player is Cooper DeJean, John, out of Iowa. Said that he could definitely play safety in the NFL, and if he did play safety, he would be the number one safety on the board. And he said he's heard from a number of teams that that they do have him ranked as their number one safety on their boards. And the reason that he is up there is he's 6'1", 209 pounds, plays extremely physical, played cornerback, primarily at Iowa. Just a playmaker on the ball, at elite athletic skills. Bruce Feldman's list at number 14 overall. He was a long jump state champion, 100-meter state champion. Really explosive, really nice mass to make tackles. Willing guy to come up and blow somebody up. Can cover really nice. He's already a first-round guy, at cornerback.
Yeah, he's a borderline first-round guy. He's in that 28, right. 29, somewhere in their range.
Exactly. But with the scheme diversity kind of element added into this, a team it would be shocking for the Seahawks to draft a guy like this. But when you really think about it, and you take a look at the Kyle Hamilton role that Mike Macdonald had with the Ravens. This is a guy that kind of fits that same sort of mold that can pretty much line up anywhere on the defense for you and make plays from all over the place, and just super intelligent. Kind of puts guys in their spots, at least at the college level. They like that. And so for me, he's my number one safety that's not a safety yet. And I really like him. And I wouldn't mind, like, if we were to drop back 2 or 3 times to get to 26, 27, where that value is for him, and pick up additional picks, I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, he's probably on their board, just based on the attributes that I've talked about.
I mean, I would be okay with that if they didn't, if they didn't have to move back all the way down into the the high 20s. Mm-hmm. If they could get to 22 and make that pick, I would think I would be okay with it, because of what Kyle Hamilton brought to the Baltimore defense, and just how much they used him in all those different ways. And it really helped make that defense better. And the Seahawks don't have that guy. They really don't. And so to go and get that guy, and to be able to pair him with Julian Love, who's also extremely versatile, I think would give Seattle what they're looking for in their secondary, and in this new scheme. And so, given the defense and its lack of quality the last couple of years, like,
right,
go get the pieces you need to be successful. And
they can get they can still get a guard. I know everyone's anxious about the guard position on the Seahawks, but they can find a starter a little bit later on in the draft.
Yeah, I mean,
but a guy like this that's elite, that you're looking for blue chip talent, not necessarily blue chip at the back end of the first round, right? But this is about as close as you can get to a guy that's going to start for you all the time and impact games. That you could do worse, is what I'm saying.
It's a really high upside in that role. I like that. And the thing is, if you miss on him, Javon Bullard's a nice, second option. Just
Agreed.
Another guy that can do all those things. So
yeah, and Tyler Nubin, same sort of thing. I mean, he's a little slower, but he's longer. He makes it up with his instincts and all that kind of stuff. But his athletic testing isn't as good as Bullard.
Mm-hmm.
Bullard's off the charts in that respect. But
yeah. So you kind of mentioned Cameron Kitchens.
Yeah.
I don't like. Man, that guy had a disappointing combine, and it wasn't just disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
It was just downright bad.
4.6, 540, and yeah.
And it's not like he has improved that at a pro day or anything. You know what I mean?
He had like a 3
surprised.
percentile broad jump, for example. He only bench pressed 13 reps, which is 17 percentile. His 10-yard split was 159, which is really poor for the position group. His vertical was 35 inches, which is 42 percentile. He was listed at 6'0", 6 foot earlier, and he measured out at 5'11". So there's just disappointment around him as a prospect after the combine. But go look at the film. Some players just don't test well, or for whatever reason, they're just slower on, linear, straight line speed. But guys can play football. Like there's football players, right? And then there's guys that just test extremely well, and then they wash out in the league. Sometimes those football players stick around for, years and years. And yeah, maybe the league was looking at him as being some sort of a top of the second round talent prior to the combine, and maybe now it's a third round kind of player. Fine. But nonetheless, he's going to be a player. I think whoever gets him, he's probably going to end up being a long-term starter in the league for a while. He's super young. He had a great Senior Bowl. Jim Nagy has great things to say about him, even after the testing. Jim Nagy said some great things about him. So I think that, when you take a look at football instincts and you take a look at just other intangibles that make up what a football player is, he's got some of those. And so not sure where he falls on Seahawks board, or if he's even on their board, but I still think he's a good player.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that if you were looking at him to come in and be a difference maker, I think he fell off your radar completely at the combine. If you're looking for a guy who's going to come in and be a solid player that's, fills a role, he can do that.
Yes.
If you're looking, if you need a star, he's not your
If you needed a single high safety that was going to shut down the back end of the defense. So that was the way he was billed prior to the combine. He was billed as this guy that's a shutdown guy. Mm-hmm. And now I think teams have to reevaluate that a little bit. They got to really go back and look at the tape because,
he's going to be a guy that's going to be, primarily liked for teams that want to play a lot of cover two.
Yes.
Not
and not
Seattle really anything else
for that.
Yeah. Under this new scheme. He's just, God, that speed or lack thereof is concerning. It really is.
Another guy with the speed issue is Tyler Nubin. A lot of draft boards consider him as a fringy first round pick, maybe second round. He's definitely not a first round talent. I would definitely have a second round grade on him. Mm-hmm. Even at that speed, just because I think that as a prospect, he's kind of an enforcer guy. He's a guy that you can, even though he's 6'1", 199, he's got a little bit of room to add a little bit more bulk, probably get up to 205 playing weight. But he's just exceptionally explosive and hard hitting and tackling ability and that kind of swagger that you're looking for. And that's going to be important on this defense. And so, but too early, I think, for the Seahawks. They don't have a pick, in the top end of the second round, where I think this guy's going to go probably before 50 somewhere. And I just don't see him being the ideal fit. I really like Bullard better in that role. Just because of that diversity. This guy's probably going to be more of a box safety, I think, in the end, as things go in the NFL. And there's a couple other guys too in the draft that are kind of have box safety written all over them. What was the guy? Jaden Hicks, Washington State is a good example. He's a great safety, great instincts. You look at him, he's a little slower as far as his straight line speed at 4.59, but he's got that 37.5-inch vertical to kind of make up for it, and the
but
ball
he's also
skills and stuff.
6'2", 211. He's one of the bigger guys in this position group, and he plays really physically.
I would have loved this pick if it was Pete Carroll's team. Like, it would have been a perfect fit.
Oh yeah, he comes in.
Jamal Adams.
He comes in as your starting strong safety on day one.
Yes,
and I think you can get him around. Or is it 81 where the Seahawks have a pick?
Right.
But he comes in. Yeah, Jamal Adams is the type of guy. He's not 240 with Cam Chancellor, but he's got kind of he's got that bigger size, and he's a good box safety, and he runs well. Although maybe not as fast as you'd like, but as a box safety, it's less of a big deal.
So here's the deal. So the interesting thing about Jaden Hicks, and people do view him kind of as a box safety, and I think it's kind of a misnomer. I think it's not looking deep enough. I think that he's got this to kind of add to his game. Very much a ball hawk, natural ability to ball hawk, and then he's got all that aggression for run support. But he's great in coverage. He drops back great. He's, so you can still do some things, especially in a too high safety look, to have him drop back. He could, a year into the system, and he might be able to develop some of those things on the back end. But so I wouldn't be opposed to even bringing a guy like that in, where he's a little more pigeonholed right now. But I think that you need guys like this on the team. So, where they're enforcers, kind of, you need that attitude, the swagger, the toughness. It's like, where are you going to get it? Where are you going to get it in this draft, Keith? I mean, the inside linebackers are really kind of okay. Some of them are more athletic than they are physical. But there's a couple of throwback guys, but
a lot of them are undersized.
Yes.
So Yeah, and the same as defensive tackle. You don't have those nose tackles. There's like 2 in the draft. Everyone else is, a 3 tech or a 5 tech. This is a place where you can go in and get some toughness.
Yeah. All right. Who else do you want to talk about?
How about Kalen Bullock out of USC?
I like 6'2". And we did kind of rub off of Tyler Nubin really quick too, but we can come back to him if you want.
Yeah, well, it's 6'2", 188. I mean, very much in the Tyler Nubin size, weight, kind of thing. A guy with a lot of ball hawking kind of skills. Good kind of guy that sits in the back and roves through and really understands route combinations and where quarterbacks are going to go with the ball so he can jump routes and a good back end safety, much more so than a guy that's going to come up in the box and stuff the run, especially at that height and weight combination. But good speed, good athleticism overall, but just elite ball skills.
Everything you just said, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of my favorite prospects. I wouldn't be opposed if the Seahawks drafted him at 81 if he's sitting there. If they decide that he's the guy to solve all of their problems and they figure out that they need to move up in the draft to get him into the 60 range and use a couple draft picks or a future to get up there, and he's their pick, fine. I think that, you mentioned right at the top of the show, there's not really elite guys in this draft, no first round prospects. And that's true. But these guys we're talking about are solid, that are going to come in and really help your defense for a long time and play key roles. It's not like these guys are going to be just buried on the depth chart and they're going to be special teams guys. These are guys that are going to eventually start on your defense and really have an impact. And, you got to, at some point, you got to trust the process with Mike Macdonald and company. He knows what he wants for his defense. And if they go get it, and if they show that they're going to move to get their guy, I'm all for that.
Yeah. You at least got to give him a chance. Let him do his thing and see if he can, build this into something, because what we had last year wasn't it. I mean, 30th ranked defense, just couldn't get off the field, couldn't stop anyone, and they needed a change. And so for him to come in and now have the ability to go find his own guys that fit what he wants to do. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. I think another player that he would look at this player and say, this is a guy that I could work with. I'm kind of split on him as a prospect, though, because he's got really, really short arms, but everything else is amazing. So Cole Bishop, the Utah safety, 6'2", 206, has 29 3/4 inch arms. Little short, right? But he's got a 39-inch vertical. He had a 1.52 split. You go watch him on film. He can really affect, the entire defense. He's a smart player. He's, very consistent. He comes up and really does the run fits very well, but also drops back into coverage, and he's kind of a ball hawk guy. So very versatile player, and that's what they're looking for. That's what they're going to pick in this draft is a guy that can play all 3 levels of a defense. And he would be a guy. I don't know how they feel about 29 3/4 inch arms, and there's a couple of different prospects with 30 and a half inch arms in this class.
Yeah, so we knew how Pete Carroll felt about it, but we don't know how Mike Macdonald feels about it. So we'll have to see about that. I mean,
but he makes up for it with that 39-inch vertical and athletic ability and anticipation and all that kind of stuff.
Good player in college. Good. I like his speed for his size. Overall, I think, and he's another guy that's going to be in that 81 range. Maybe if they move down or they wait until that 3rd pick, which is 102, I think now. A guy that could probably be there. I wouldn't have any problem with Seahawks drafting him. I think he has a potential to come in and develop into Julian Love, to be honest. Kind of the same, just versatile player.
Mm-hmm. So there's a few more prospects. I mean, I really like this next group
Taylor.
I like this next group of prospects that we're going to talk about, because I think there's still a lot of talent available in special teams too.
We skipped over Dadrian Taylor Demerson out of Texas Tech. And I think
I have him a little lower than Cole Bishop, but that's good.
Really?
Yeah.
I have him right above him. 5'10", 197. So he's a little shorter. Smart, high football IQ, 4.41. So he's one of the faster safeties in this group. He is a guy that is a free safety. He's a back end of the defense kind of guy. Good speed, covers a lot of distance. Very instinctual as far as that role. I like him in their 1.52 split on the 40 to go with that high end speed. 38-inch vertical. I just think overall this is a guy that is.
If this guy reaches the fourth round, at Seattle's pick, and we haven't addressed the position yet, this could definitely be a guy that's on their radar. Total special teams guy. Football IQ is really high. Exceptional speed, makeup speed, man coverage, has the agility to play in zone, and the leadership skills, all that stuff. The guy you can develop. I mean, to have athletes like that on your defense is pretty cool. It's all going to come down. A guy like this is all going to come down to area scouting and who sells him to the team and all that kind of stuff. But and then the Sione Vakai, is that how you pronounce it?
I think
the
so.
Safety out of Utah is another prospect, a little more slower, but also exceptional agility to make up for his height at 5'11", 210, ran a 4.6, 240, 39.5-inch vertical though. Good strength, ball skills are good, tackling ball awareness, tracking the ball, all that kind of stuff. Another good prospect.
See, I've got him after a shelf.
I've got him as a fourth round guy.
Yeah, I've got him as a fifth-ish round guy.
I can see that.
Because to me, it comes down, there's some guys, there's two guys that we haven't talked about that are in that, third round, maybe early fourth. And then I think there's a big shelf and a big gap before you get to the Vakai and some of those guys. We didn't talk about Bo Braid out of Marshall. 4'5", 240, 6 foot, 203. Very much an in the box guy that comes up, plays really physical against the run. I think he is a guy that needs some development time in coverage, but he's ready to come in and make an impact as a run defender at safety right away. And the athleticism and everything is there for him. He just needs more practice time, more reps, more coaching for him to become good enough in coverage to be a truly impactful player. I think he could step in and do the job right now. If you're not looking for a guy that's going to be elite. So there's him.
I agree. I've got a couple of players up in front of him just a little bit. And Ketan Oladapo from Oregon State, 6'2", 216, 5'4", 840. He's known as a box guy. He's got that reputation, but he's also good in zone coverage, also good out on the edges if you need him to be. He's flexible, good recognition skills, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I got him
Smith
after the shelf too.
Okay.
Did we just skip over Ronaldo Green?
I had him, yes, and I had him in our cornerback discussion.
That's right. I've got him as a safety, 6 foot, 180, 86, 44940. He is a cover guy. He's kind of the opposite of the last couple guys we've talked about that were in the box, but not good in coverage. This is a guy that's a coverage safety back end. I don't want him up in the box very often. I think that just isn't his skill set. But so, yeah, he's the other guy that I've got above the shelf. And then
I like the guys in your next shelf though. Like as far as upside goes, it's like there's some really good athletes in this class.
Yeah. So when I get down to Oladapo, which we still need to talk about. You mentioned his name, but we should come out. Oh no, you said he's box guy, but which really is 6'2", 216. But to me, him, Vakai, and Tyke Smith are after that shelf. So you get down into the fourth round with Bo Braid, and then I don't take anyone until late 5. And that's where you start to get Vakai,
well, James
Oladapo.
Williams maybe. But yeah, 5, 6, like Evan Williams, so let's talk about the shelf, because I think I like these guys, and that's where you're going to get special teams guys. You're going to take chances on guys. Maybe you find a diamond in the rough. That's where these guys are. And I kind of like this area and the names that we're going to talk about.
There is one guy after this shelf that I am super intrigued about.
Mustafa.
Yes. Out of Wake Forest, 5'10", 209, 4'3", 340. This dude's got serious wheels. On the freak list, just everything about him athletically is there. He can run with anyone.
23 miles an hour on GPS.
Yeah, I mean, he's got that Earl Thomas speed, and he's just built like a guy that can play. He also is raw and needs coaching, and
he also loves to develop. Hit.
Oh yeah, he's really physical. That's
really physical. I like that about him. See, the guy that loves football, guy that just wants to hit, be aggressive, good in run support, all that kind of stuff. Ball skills are good. He just, he plays at Wake Forest, and you're going to have to figure that out. He's, 5'10", 209. He's got a 30-inch arm, and so there's going to be a little bit of length discussion about him. But the speed and the ability, I think he had like a 37-inch vertical at his pro day. So that, he's got the jumping ability, the agility. He's just going to have to come into the NFL and figure it out. And he's a guy that you kind of take a shot on,
Oh yeah. Other than Bullard, he's probably my favorite safety in this class.
He's a lot of people's favorite safety.
And I know that he is going to be down in the draft, and he's a project, and he's not a guy that's ready to come in and do more than special teams probably in this first year, but damn, I love him as a prospect. I think he's going to be great.
Nice. I'd mentioned earlier Evan Williams out of Oregon, 5'11", 200. They had a great secondary there. I think that's where the reputation with him kind of comes in, because he is athletic, good in run support, all that kind of stuff. Better zone defender than a man guy, but 40.5-inch vertical and a 4.08 shuttle are elite times for him. Josh Proctor is another guy, 6'2", 189. Kenny Logan from Kansas, 5'10", 213 pounds. If you really want a guy that's going to be physical, solid ball skills, a guy that's, really loves football and is going to play special teams for you, he's a guy. Dominic Hampton from Washington, everyone's kind of familiar with him. 6'2", 215 pounds, super athletic, 5'1", 40, 33.25-inch arms, 39-inch vertical, and a very attractive option there at Washington. The offense at Washington got all the accolades, but the defense was no slouch either, and he was definitely a big part of that. So, and there's a couple other prospects too.
There's one other guy that I want to make sure we don't miss before going out of here, and that would be Tyler Owens out of Texas Tech. Because this guy's 6'2", 216, which is big, and runs a 4.30. Yeah. So this guy is
33
big.
and a 3/8 arm, 80-inch broad, or 80-inch wingspan, 41-inch vertical, 146-inch broad jump. That's 12 feet, 2 inches. That's really close to an all-time record at the broad jump as well.
I mean, this guy's just athletically freaky. And
So why is a guy with all this athletic attribute, with all these measurables, so far down in the draft?
You go watch his tape, and there's a guy who's only had 12 starts, played less than 1,000 snaps on defense in college, and you can tell he is a guy who's his tape from this last year is. It looks kind of like you're watching a guy that's in his freshman year. Yeah, he needs time. He needs development. He needs an opportunity to come in and learn to play the position. Athletically, he's everything that you'd want.
You remember the prospect Jeremy Chin, right?
Yeah.
In the draft, when we did draft shows leading up to that draft, it was like 4 or 5 years ago at this point. He was a guy that we loved, and this guy reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah. Jeremy Chin was a free agent.
I was surprised we didn't go get him.
Yeah, I was too. I understand why, because they didn't want to spend at the position because they're trying to get out from underneath those awful safety contracts, and they didn't want to replace them with another one.
Well, Rashawn Jenkins actually making a little bit more money than Jeremy Chin, but I like the idea of Rashawn Jenkins being a little bit more multiple and diverse.
Well, he's making more money, but I thought it was a shorter contract.
Sure.
So it gets them out from underneath it.
Dude, right? Like he's one of my favorite filler picks in the 7th round for the Seahawks. You're in your draft.
Every time
he's usually
every time
out
we do a mock, I'm looking for him, in round 7, just being like, if you see there, click.
And it's because of all that athleticism. I mean, you want a guy that's going to be able to have at least a shot to stick at the roster, and special teams is going to be the way you do it. And that's where this guy fits the first 2 years of his career.
But the athleticism and all that stuff is so intriguing, because if he can learn the position and make fewer, of those mistakes just from inexperience, he's got the sky's the limit with that kind of athleticism. He's just there's a lot of development to be had there, but just a 6th or 7th round pick. I mean, you're not giving anything up to go take a shot at a guy that could end up being elite down the road. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, there's some other guys too. There's some priority free agents we could talk, but I think that the overarching idea with this class that we just talked about is the scheme adaptability with a lot of these guys, and Mike Macdonald's made that very clear that that's what they're looking for. He's made that clear with adding Rashawn Jenkins to the roster and Kayvon Wallace as well, guys that can kind of play, move around for you, and that's what they're going to be looking at. If they go corner in this draft for whatever reason, or if they go safety, it's going to be guys that can play multiple positions and allow Macdonald to disguise his defense. And
I mean, that's what he's known for, is confusing quarterbacks, really disguising what they're doing. And to do that, you need guys that you can put in different situations and still have them succeed. And this is the right draft to get one of those guys, as long as you aren't looking for a guy, Kyle Hamilton, to come in and be that guy on day one, because there isn't a top end safety. Right. There's 2nd and 3rd round. There's a lot of safeties.
Cooper Jajan or Cooper Jajin, however you pronounce that, is a really close comp. Not a comp. I mean, Hamilton's kind of in a class by himself. I think he could have been a top 5 pick in most drafts. I think he went 15 overall when he was drafted. But I think that if you're wanting a guy that's going to be physical and in that role, you didn't go out and find somebody in free agency, he might be the guy. There's a couple of different prospects when they're looking at linebackers. There was one guy that they brought in on a 30 visit. Nathaniel Watson is a guy that I really like, that's really physical. They can move him around outside, inside, etc. That I thought was an interesting visit. that they have planned. But Cooper DeJean, I really like that guy. So we're done with our initial prospect evaluations. What do you think overall about the class? Where is it strong? Where is it at its weakest? And how does Seattle approach that? How do they make it all work?
It's weird because where this draft is strong is where it's in positions where the Seahawks don't have great need. Tackle, cornerback, wide receiver. Yeah. Where it's, I wouldn't say weak, but yeah, kind of is where the Seahawks do have need. And that's like linebacker, nose tackle. God, there's like 2 true nose tackles in this draft. And one of them is going to go first round. And that's problematic if you're Seattle. And that's kind of frustrating in that the Seahawks are if they feel like they have to get a nose tackle in this draft, you're going to have to reach for someone. You're going to have to use pick 16 to get the guy from Texas rather than where he should go, which is like 30.
Maybe they aren't looking for the guy that, Byron Murphy. Maybe they're looking at Tervondre Sweat instead. Maybe they want that 350-pound, 365-pound nose tackle on their roster, and that's going to be the anchor, and that's what's really important to him. I know they've talked about it. In fact, they're bringing in another prospect, Boyd, who's a true nose tackle, will be available later in the draft. He's coming in for a 30 visit. And so I know they're looking at the position. I just don't know where they find it because he literally Boyd, Tervondre Sweat, and there's like one other guy that's over 325 pounds at the defensive tackle spot that's going to get drafted. There's probably some other guys that are going to be priority free agents, but draftable grade wise, there's nobody.
Yeah. That's the problem. So if you're like, oh, we have to get one, you have to overdraft one, which means that you're missing out on really good talent at other positions because you feel like you have to overdraft someone. So you're getting a second round talent in the first round and missing out on a whole bunch of first round quality talent that will be all the way through into the second round and beyond. And that's not a strategy, that's not a recipe for long-term success in this league. And so I hope that, that's what the Hankins signing does, is it gives them, okay, we're not going to get a nose in this draft because it's too weak, but let's go get a high-end, offensive lineman. And it could be Austin Powers Johnson. It could be
Austin Powers.
What? Oh God.
Austin Powers. I love that. I love that actually. Austin Powers Johnson.
Powers Johnson.
Jackson Powers. I think.
Jackson Powers Johnson. Yeah. Clearly I need more coffee this morning. Damn. But yeah, or use your picks, because if you can get an elite player later,
or drop back and get more picks.
Yeah, and still get an elite player. I'd rather have the team do that and see what Cameron Young can do at nose tackle than overdraft a nose tackle and end up in a position where you're letting other teams get better, then you're helping to generate a talent deficit by overdrafting a single position.
The entire basis of Mike Macdonald's entire defensive philosophy is build a wall in the middle and funnel everything to the outside. There's no way that they can do that. So stopping the run, we were almost dead last, if not dead last in the NFL last year with essentially the same personnel minus whoever we draft. They need somebody to rotate. Now, if it's Cameron Young, fine. I just don't think that they believe it's Cameron Young because they just really haven't had a chance to see him in that role, and so I see them trying to reach a little bit, or drop back and be in a position with additional draft picks to be in the zone where they can draft a Trevon Sweat where it makes more sense, or another player that maybe we're not focusing on that they like, because they need to solve that in order for the defense to function properly. And I've said this like for 5 years straight, and I'm glad they got Hankins, because that's kind of the beginning, but it's not the end.
No, Hankins is an older player who's the last couple of years have not been the high quality that he was earlier in his career. And so, yeah, he's a draft hedge. He's a guy that if they don't get the guy they want, they know they're okay for a year, but he's not a long-term solution. Yes. And so either Cameron Young develops or they need a guy.
So speaking of our own roster, we're going to do a roster evaluation show next, where we're going to take a look at all the free agency moves that we've done, our existing players, and take a look at the upcoming draft and just kind of figure out where we're at. How competitive are we? Are we in good position ahead of the draft? Are we not? Where are the major holes that are still needing to be addressed, et cetera? Then we'll do a mock draft in the show following that. We'll take a look around the NFC West. I know that we've got to show what are the other teams doing in our own division. What have they done to get better, or have they gotten worse this year? And then we're coming up on the draft. We're going to do a draft preview on the offensive side of the ball. On the defensive side, we're going to have a recap show. We're going to have a roster update show after that. So we've got a lot of really good material coming up. I hope everyone enjoys that. That's it, Keith. Anything else?
Oh, let's. Can you believe that we're just about to April and the draft is getting incredibly close?
It's getting really close. I'm really excited. It seems like, there's so much more work to do, especially this year with the new scheme, new coaches, and it's a little bit more unpredictable. We're sitting at a spot in the draft at 16 overall, but we don't have another pick until 81. It just seems like it's not going to stay that way. I just don't know for sure how they're going to address that. And are they going to get a quarterback? Is a quarterback going to fall to them? What happens then? Does their board completely blow up?
Because
if they do that,
if something weird happens, and let's say J.J. McCarthy's sitting there at 16,
or maybe they like Michael Penix,
well, I don't know. I think the trade for Sam Howell tells us what they expect to happen, and they don't expect someone that they want to be available at 16.
Right.
And they're not willing to give up what it's required to move up to get a guy. But if a guy falls, for whatever the reason, just teams, want to get in on that tackle market, which is really good, or because certain positions are weaker. They're just trying to get their guy, and you end up with someone falling for whatever the reason. They're sitting there at 16, and you go, "Can we pass this up?" And then what do you do? Because your whole plan for the rest of the draft was built around, okay, we're going to trade down. We're going to get another draft pick or two in those middle rounds. We're going to get our offensive lineman. We're going to get our defensive lineman. We're going to get our safety and a linebacker, and now you're like, do we throw all of that out and draft a quarterback?
Yes.
Right. And you have to make that decision.
If that's their guy, if that's their guy, you've got to do it, and you just figure it out. You trade away future draft capital to get back into the draft in certain spots. You do whatever you need to do, but you go get your guy for sure. Yeah.
I'm just saying, like your draft strategy just completely dies, and you have to, your whole roster building for the off season, that plan disappears, and now you got to figure it out.
Yeah, somehow or another, the next mock draft we do, I want it to kind of be built around draft strategy with that 16th pick. Like, what if this player was hanging around? What would you do? Like, what are the real values to trade back? How does that change the dynamic of the draft? What if we stick and pick and we wait 60 picks in between 16 and 81 or whatever it is. What does that do? What does that tell you about how the team wants to be competitive in 2024? All those sorts of conversations to be had.
Sticking and picking, especially if they stick and pick a quarterback and then wait 65 picks, I think it's telling us that they don't care.
They don't want to win in 2024.
They don't care if they're that competitive. They want to be competitive, but they don't care that much because moving back, getting another like a second round pick and another third, and then filling the roster with talent that way is how you stay competitive this year. Getting a quarterback and then nothing for a while is how you build for the future, because you're like, okay, we want to be elite at a certain position, so we're going to do that, and we're going to sacrifice the balance across our roster in order to do it.
Which do you prefer?
Honestly, I kind of I don't want to see them give up a lot of capital to move up to get a quarterback. But like I said, if McCarthy drops, or some people are talking about like Drake May might drop, which I think is hilarious. But if he does and he's sitting there, take him. Punt on the season and develop young guys. Just focus on player development. And you're about to come out from underneath a lot of really bad contracts that you've dumped this offseason, and have a bunch of cap room. You can go in and you can build the roster a year from now around a quarterback talent that can get you to a Super Bowl. Whereas if you move back and do that, you can build a roster, but I don't think Geno can get you to a Super Bowl. And we don't know if Sam Howell can develop into a guy that can get you to a Super Bowl. I mean, that 21 interception certainly is going to scare some people off, even though he did some nice things and played behind one of the worst offensive lines in football and had very little in the way of talent around him. He still wasn't that great, but he was interesting. There's clearly talent there. So I don't know. That's a big question mark. I would, if you give an opportunity to go get someone that can take you to a Super Bowl, you got to go do it. Okay.
I like it. I'm kind of view it the same way, but yeah, let's talk about it.
Do you want to be good every year, or do you want to be championship caliber for a few years?
Well, it depends on where you're at with your roster, honestly. And if they view the roster as being closer than we do, you're kind of building to win. Now, the overall philosophy for John Schneider is, hey, we're in contention. We're gonna try to win. So sacrificing a season, I don't necessarily think it would be a complete sacrifice. I just think that we wouldn't have as many draft picks, but I think that it's like an 80-20 split for me. 80-20, they either stick and pick for whatever reason, or they drop back and accumulate picks and fill out their roster this year. Mm-hmm. And I would be fine with that strategy, I think, because we're probably 3 starters away from being even a playoff team, right? And then we still have to fill out the roster with good quality players throughout. I think that bounty added to this existing roster is going to be the best way to kind of be competitive in 2024, while still being competitive in the future. I mean, Geno's no slouch. I hear you when you say, I don't know if he can reach Super Bowl. I don't know either. He hasn't. He hasn't shown that.
But he hasn't shown it, and he's also old enough. He's not getting better at this point.
I've seen less talented quarterbacks get to the Super Bowl with a really nice roster around them, and we don't have that really nice roster around him. We've got an okay roster with a new coach and a new offensive coordinator. Anything can happen. It's more likely that kind of blows up a little bit as opposed to is really successful. Mm-hmm. Let's be real. But
I just don't want to end up basically where the Seahawks have been, where they're a
mediocre forever
6th or 7th seed. Yes, they make the playoffs, but they're not truly in contention. They're just a team filling out a playoff bracket every year. And
yeah, 8 to 10 wins every year is the worst possible place you can be.
Yeah, because you're never in high enough in the draft to get an elite quarterback, but you're not good enough, especially at that position, to continue getting better. And like I said, Geno's at his age, he's not getting better. So,
yeah. All right, Let's get out of here. Let's talk about the roster on the next show. You can find Keith on Twitter at Myers NFL. You can find me at NW Seahawk. The show is Seahawks Playbook Podcast on your favorite podcast platform and our own YouTube channel. And hit the subscribe button when you find it. Share it with your friends. Leave a comment. We love those as well. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Seahawks Playbook Podcast listeners, thanks for joining us for another edition of the show. You can find us on Twitter. Bill is at NW Seahawk. Keith is at Myers NFL. And the show is at Hawks Playbook. You can listen and subscribe to the show at SeahawksPlaybook.com.